Okay, good evening, everyone, and a very happy new year to you all. I'd like to welcome members and officers to this Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting and also welcome anyone watching online via the North Hearts YouTube channel. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee, member and scrutiny manager to explain how proceedings will work and to undertake a roll call of those attending remotely.
Thank you, Chair. So we have one officer joining us this evening. Can I just check that Jamie Norris is with us and that we can hear him and he can hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Great. Yeah, we can hear you. Thank you, Jamie. So in terms of the rules of debate, if a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on your microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. The normal procedure rules in respect of debate and times to speak will apply. Voting. Due to technical issues with the electronic voting system in the chamber, voting will take place by raising your hands. I will announce the total number of yes, no, abstain votes and whether the motion has been carried or lost. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will still have the casting vote. Are there any questions on how we'll vote or anything else about the meeting before we start? No, thank you then. Back to you then, Chair.
Thank you, James. Item 1, apologies for absence. I've received apologies from Councillor Laura Williams and Councillor Tom Tyson. Having given due notice, Councillor Emma Fernandez will be substituting for Councillor Williams. Are there any further apologies? No? Okay. Item 2, minutes of the 12th of November 2024. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on November 12th, 2024. Can I have a seconder?
Yep. More than happy to second, Chair.
Okay. Key. Are there any comments on the minutes? No. Okay. In that case, we'll go to a vote.
Thank you, Chair. So can you raise your hand to vote yes to approve the minutes? That's 8 votes for the yes. To vote no? 0 votes for no. And any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thank you, Chair. That motion is carried.
Okay. Thank you. That was good practice. Notification of other business. No other business has been notified. Item 4, Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. Members are reminded to make declaration of interest before an item. A detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purposes of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. Members are reminded that we have adopted a scrutiny charter which outlines how we conduct scrutiny at North Hearts Council, including the need for independence, initiative and integrity. It is important that all members are mindful of this in how they approach the items on the agenda tonight and at future meetings. Full details on the adopted charter can be found on the Council's intranet page for members. I have agreed to a change to the order of the agenda, and item 13, Overview and Scrutiny Work Programme, will be taken after agenda item 16, Scrutiny Decisions and Monitoring Tracker. Item 5, Public Participation. There is no public participation. Item 6, urgent and general exception items. I've been notified and agreed to one urgent general exception item to be presented to Cabinet on the 14th of January 2025, which relates to the Leisure Centre decarbonisation project. There's been a projected increase in costs, which comes from revised modelling on the expected electricity demand from the air source heat pumps for the centres, which has been identified at the detailed design stage of the project. The reason for urgency is that to meet the SALIX grant funding requirements, orders need to be placed for the heat pumps on the 15th of January 2025. If the window for ordering the heat pumps is missed, the Council would most likely have to return the 7.7 million grant to SALIX because it would not be able to meet the primary grant condition, which is to replace gas heating with low carbon technologies. There is no guarantee that the Council will be successful in any future round of funding. Therefore, the decision cannot be deferred to a future Cabinet meeting. The formal notice has been published on the Council's website, and the report has been circulated to members of the committee earlier today, and the Service Director has agreed to provide an update on this under item 14 this evening as well. Okay, item 7, called in items. No items have been called in. Item 8, members' questions. No questions from members have been received. Item 9, I propose that under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Claydon, thank you. And can we have a vote?
Thank you, Chair. So again, yeah, if you can raise your hand to vote yes to that motion. Thank you, Chair. That's 10 votes for yes, and just for completeness for the top. Oh no, yep, that's everyone. Yep, thank you. That's carried then, Chair. If you can just give us a second and we'll move into part 2.
Thank you. Okay, item 11, Leisure and Active Communities Agency Model Part 1. Councillor Mick Debenham to present.
Thank you, Chair. In March 2023, HMRC announced a significant change to the VAT treatment of local authority leisure services, which means that most suppliers of leisure services by a local authority can now be treated as non-business. So now, when a local authority sells a leisure service, a gym membership for example, it no longer needs to charge VAT on that sale. As it is treated as non-business, the local authority is able to recover all the VAT it incurs for providing that service. Several leisure operators, including Everyone Active, who manage leisure centres on behalf of local authorities, are now considering how the change could also improve the VAT position between the operator and the local authority. In September 2024, SLM, Everyone Active, sent a proposal to North Herts Council for consideration regarding the creation of an agency model whereby they would act as our agent for delivering leisure services. The details of the proposal were discussed during the Part 2 item. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Debenham. Do any members have any questions? Councillor Prescott.
So just for clarity, if the council, as effectively the operator, does not have to charge VAT on the example given was a gym membership, that means the member of the general public would save money. Is that correct? No, if they're not charging, if the gym membership is, let's say, £500 a year, which would otherwise have been plus VAT, now there's no VAT, they're only going to pay £500 a year.
I don't know if we can talk about that in part 1 or not, but sure. Because it refers to the details of the proposal. I don't think we don't.
Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of these issues were discussed extensively in part 2 as well. Councillor Munter.
Again, this may be a matter for part 2. However, if we're talking about timeframes, how long do we expect this process to be completed if Cabinet does approve it? If that's something that can be answered in this section.
Yeah, I think the aim is for it to commence on the 1st of April 2025, so the new financial year, if we can get it completed for them.
Any further questions? Okay. Then we'll move into the recommendations, which are the overview and scrutiny recommend to Cabinet. That's 2.1. Cabinet agrees in principle to entering into an agency agreement with SLM, Everyone Active, for the operation of our leisure services, subject to the Council obtaining favourable VAT tax advice and varying the contract in accordance with the external Part 2 Appendix C legal advice and Part 2 legal implications. And 2.2, that the final decision on entering into the agency agreement be delegated to the Service Director Place in consultation with the Executive Member for Leisure, Environment and Green Spaces and Service Directors, Resources and Legal and Community. I'll propose that. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Bartois, thank you. Okay, is there any debate on this? Councillor Claydon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just for the record, just want to state that while I see the opportunity here and understand the reasoning behind this, for the reasons discussed in the Part 2 section, I feel that the balance of risks doesn't line up well enough in my view, so I will be voting against.
Thank you, Councillor Claydon. Councillor Manser.
Thank you. And just to sort of echo the comments of which I made in the Part 2 section of the meeting, every contract, every matter that this council deals with has a level of risk. It's about how that risk is managed. And on the balance, I think that the risks can be managed with the relevant contract renegotiation that the council wishes to seek, and if successful could result in a not insubstantial amount of money, of which can be then put in and reinvested into public services in North Hertfordshire.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other contributions to the debate, so we'll move to the vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. So, yep, voting on recommendations 2.1 and 2.2. Please raise your hand for a vote yes. That's 8 yes. And to vote no, please raise your hand. And that's 2 noes, and there are no abstentions. Therefore, Chair, that is carried.
Okay, thank you very much, James. And thank you to Jamie as well for your attendance and help this evening. Okay, we'll move on to item 12, the crime and disorder matters. We have members of the police force in the adjoining room, so they'll come and join us in a moment. Okay. So yeah, good evening to Chief Inspector Hannah Treadwell, Inspector James Lant, and PS Taz Gill from Herts Police, and they're going to present with slides and I think maybe videos I've heard too on youth engagement and crime prevention. So thank you very much. I'll hand over to you now. Thanks.
Who's operating the slide? Just a nod when I'm good to move on. Perfect, thank you. As long as I can see you, I'm nodding at. Right, can I just check you can hear me all? Good, got a fairly large voice. So, right, good evening. As I said, I'm Hannah Treadwell. This is James Lant and Taryn Gill, and we are from North Herts Police. So, I'm going to talk to you this evening about youth engagement and crime prevention. And just covering off briefly, so a brief introduction and a structure of our MPT neighbourhood policing in North Herts, our vision, put my teeth in, our vision, mission and values. And we'll talk very briefly around our control strategy, what that looks like and how that links into our work and our priorities and how that feeds into our actions through the year. Departments within Hertfordshire that are involved with youth engagement and crime prevention, a review of what we've done in the last year, and then a bit of a summary and actions going forward, what we're hoping to do, and then obviously any feedback from yourselves and questions. So just a bit brief structure. So you've got myself, Chief Inspector Hannah Treadwell. I've been in North Herts just over 2 years now, having come from a background of a detective chief inspector role within safeguarding, so violence against women and girls, again within the child protection world and arena, and child online sexual team. So lots of bits of experience there. Then under myself, James Lant as my MPT inspector, and then we also have the response and detective teams. So we have a team at Letchworth, which is our neighbourhood team. They also sit at Hitchin and Royston. And then we have our response team. So they're what we call our intervention cops, who will go to your 999 calls, whether they be traffic collisions, domestic incidents, missing persons. They're based out of Hitchin and also Royston. So we've got that coverage across the two. And they will also occasionally work out of Letchworth for the jobs there. And then we have a detective team based at Hitchin. So that's our CID, for want of a better word, or local crime unit as we call them. That's a team of detectives, civilian investigator, and also our Scorpion team, who are plainclothes proactive officers. So they will look at any organised crime groups we've got within the CSP. They will pick up any particular themes and trends, so any, vehicle crime, where we've had youth issues previously up in Royston. So they will be bespoke and targeted to trends and issues that we have. And then sitting underneath James, you have Taz Gill. I said that here. Taz is our Hitchin MPT sergeant. We have Ryan Champion, who is based at Letchworth, John Hickmott, who is at Royston, and then Chris Adsed, who is our CSU sergeant. And then underneath each of those is obviously a mixture of urban and rural PCs and the ASB team and licensing. So quite a nice plethora of officers and teams that we can use to tackle a wide range of issues depending on what comes up, and we can sort of flex according to that control strategy and what trends we are seeing.
That's mine, isn't it? Up to me. So this slide is just in relation to our vision, mission and values that we hold within Hertfordshire. It sits alongside our control strategy, which Chief Inspector Treadwell will go through in the next slide. But we just wanted this slide to sort of show that our core value is to prevent harm, prevent crime, prevent offending, and take a collaborative approach in everything that we do. So that's not just within our neighbourhood team at North Herts, but actually set from above in terms of what our chief officers actually want from us. So if you just go on to the next slide, if that's okay, thank you very much. I'll hand back over to Chief Inspector Treadwell for the control strategy. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thank you, Taz. So as you'll see, it's quite a busy slide. The format of the control strategy within the force has changed over the years. It gets refreshed normally every 12 months. This is the first time it's been in this format. Previously, it's been a lot more targeted, and I think it's probably been acknowledged that at the moment everything's a priority, which can make it really difficult, because a bit like I always say, if everyone pays for speedy boarding, no one's getting on board speedily. So it's nice because it encompasses everything. So it gives us free range as a CSP to look at that and actually look at our stats and our crime figures and trends. What are we hearing back from the public? What are we hearing from yourselves, the councillors? What are the issues? And we can then pick and flex depending on what the stats are telling us, what the ASB figures are telling us, where we need to focus. And it will depend, whilst it is a Hertfordshire control strategy, the issues that we have in North Herts will be very different to 10 minutes down the road at Stevenage, and very different to other side of the county, Watford or Broxbourne. So again, each CSP can pick from that as to what they like and focus their resources. So we might say, for example, with our Scorpion team, we've had a spate of motor vehicle thefts or burglaries in rural locations. We need to put them on late turn evening shifts or overnight shifts because we want them out in plain clothes, patrolling, looking for that, looking for issues, walking up and down certain roads. So it's good because we can flex and specifically target according to what the issue is. I was told today it's due to be refreshed probably in the next month, and we will likely see it come back to a much more focused control strategy where we've got some real key themes. Certainly how it used to look, it was a bit like a temperature chart. So we had, really high harm, VOG offences, county lines, etc. Then down to the lower end of the scale, things like shoplifting, which again, can be slightly controversial, because sometimes if you're in a CSP where shoplifting is through the roof, that's going to be top of your priorities, not bottom. So again, we have that autonomy to be able to just flex as we see fit.
Right, yes, I think this slide's for me. This, if you just click it once more, very important image here to give you an idea of just how many jigsaw pieces are in the puzzle, both at a local and a county level. Obviously, we've got our own responsibilities around youth crime prevention and engagement, but also there are many departments dedicated to this work elsewhere in the county as well. And very much the mantra, I'm sure you're familiar with the phrase prevention first, which is very much the direction that the force has taken in the last few years, getting ahead of the problem, solving it perhaps before it becomes a problem, using data systems to identify emerging hotspots, and enabling us to identify people that might be at risk of, whether it be child criminal exploitation or something along those lines. Maybe they're going to become a habitual knife carrier. Can we get ahead of those emerging problems using the data more smartly, and obviously then allocating that individual to the correct department? Just a couple I'm going to pull out from here, just to talk about a little bit. You may well have heard the county's children and young people team, just a really, really important team that have a county-wide responsibility. They've got a dedicated rep in North Herts, PC Jackie Hickman, who my neighbourhood policing team work extremely closely with, and she's a very capable officer. She's part of a sub-team within children's young persons team. It's a very long title. It used to be called Schools and Gangs. It's now the Youth Justice and Early Intervention Team. And the Child Criminal Exploitation Prevention and Diversion Team. That's the team that she's part of. Now she's full-time dedicated to one-to-one engagement with young people, those that are starting to go off on the wrong tangent, whether they've been referred in through the schools or some other pathway. They build bespoke plans around those individuals to try and stop them becoming vulnerable to things like getting involved in county lines, other types of criminal exploitation, sadly, gang affiliation, child sexual exploitation as well. It is all about whether they engage or not. Of course, there's only so much you can do with a young person and their family if they're not keen to engage. Then there might be a variety of reasons why they wouldn't be. But I can certainly say they've had a huge number of amazing successes, being able to get a number of young people back on the correct track. And it's also about avoiding criminalising young people as well. So the other strand of CYP is called the Youth Justice and Early Intervention Team. They're a small dedicated team. They work with young offenders that have committed low-level offences, and it's about making sure we keep them out of the criminal justice system wherever we possibly can, and knowing the impact that an early conviction or caution or something might have on a young person. Can we find other means to resolve that particular investigation in a different way? For example, using a community resolution. So they lead on youth out of court disposals for the county, and again, they have a breadth of expertise that is very, very useful. And their main mantra is trying to keep those individuals out of the criminal justice system. And if those individuals are willing to work with us and then often go on to work with Jackie's team, then even better. We're also talking about crime prevention tonight, so I thought I'd mention the COST team as well. That's the Child Online Safeguarding Team. They're a small unit of detectives and investigators. They specialise in the enforcement investigation into adults who commit offences involving the possession and distribution of indecent images of children. So, of course, there you've got young people that are victims of crime, and just as important is trying to prevent them becoming victims of crime in the first place. And where we're not able to do so, that the department in this particular crime type is absolutely dedicated to locating and dealing with those offenders very robustly. Also thought I'd just mention the missing persons team. They've been running for some years now, and I don't know how many forces now have missing persons team, but it's certainly not standard across the county. So they are dedicated. They've got responsibility for locating missing persons who are often under 18. Again, those are youths that we'd be interested in from a vulnerability point of view. And also we know that youths who do go missing are certainly far more at risk of committing crime or becoming victims of crime, often serious crimes. If they're being groomed, for example, I've dealt with a number of reports of young people that are at great risk of exactly those kind of terrible offences. And their other strand of work is around prevention again. So we come back to the prevention first mantra, building problem-solving plans with relevant partners to try and address why does this young person keep going missing? What can we do to try and stop that? And it's also a benefit for us in terms of demand, and missing people can create a lot of demand, albeit they lead on that now. We still have to conduct local inquiries as well. So that problem solving strand is just important as finding them as well. So yeah, thank you. Just wanted to cover that. I don't know if you want to add any more.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think just another point is the cyber protect. Something that I'm quite passionate about myself. I'm a bit of a sort of self sort of claimed geek, if I can use that word. But one thing that we definitely like to focus on in Hertfordshire is cyber protect, and following on from that prevention first ethos. Obviously, technology is changing. A lot of children are getting involved in a lot of cyber related crime and cyber enabled crime. So the cyber protect team sit within our specialist cyber crime unit, and their role is to engage with schools, engage with colleges, and they're pretty proactive. So they'll go out to schools. I've gone out with Shen, who's one of our cyber protect officers, and it's all about education. So very similar to what Inspector Lance said. They educate kids on how to safely navigate Xbox, Facebook, Instagram, which is a big crime type that is luring kids into cyber-enabled crime. So education is at the heart of Cyber Protect, and Shen does an outstanding job of going to different schools, not only in North Hertfordshire, but across the whole of the county, to really embed that education to prevent children from being victims of cyber-enabled crime. That also links into other departments like JCPIT, who are the Joint Child Protection Investigation Team. So they obviously are an investigative department once an offence has occurred, but they have a big part to play in safeguarding, and they actively engage with a lot of these other departments to ensure that safeguarding is at the forefront of children and their welfare. They take a huge lead on joint strategy meetings, engage with children's services, adult services, working with families to make sure that, you know, children welfare is at the heart of their sort of the well-being and making sure that they're thriving in the community. But cyber is something that has really been a big part of engagement in Hertfordshire, and Shen does an outstanding job. So yeah, cyber is very, very important, and we work with Shen, and we've taken presentations from Shen and delivered them into certain schools in North Hertfordshire as well. So we're very proud to say that our engagement with schools is really good.
And I think for me, you know, certainly when, you know, and all credit to Tazia because he's created the presentation, but when he laid it all out like this, I think it gives a real appreciation and understanding of it's not just one or two teams that are involved from different aspects, different stages of intervention, prevention, education. There are so many different departments within the constabulary that work towards protecting and educating, safeguarding, etc., etc. So, you know, we're really lucky with some of the SPOCs that we have in those teams. They're really, really passionate about what they do, and that shows. So yeah, that's everyone who's involved with youth engagement and crime prevention.
Yeah, so we just wanted to go on a little bit more and talk about some of the achievements from the past year. If you're able to go on to the next slide, please. Just one more skip. I think there'll be some pictures that come up. So I don't know if anyone here is familiar with the Crucial Crew concept. We've established a working relationship with an organisation called Child Safety Media that work nationally, that deliver a number of educational inputs about important issues that are often overlooked in the curriculum. Things like personal safety, staying safe online, knife crime, fire safety, safeguarding, health and well-being, safety on the railways, even first aid as well. And they have a package that they deliver in schools to ages 10 and 11, so those just about to start secondary school. And we delivered our first one in North Herts back in October. It was a week and a half of delivery to over 1,000 children. It's a full day's input. It wasn't just North Herts Police there. We had British Transport Police. We had members of the, but not only my neighbour policing team, but also the child criminal exploitation team. That was Jackie that I mentioned earlier. Hertfordshire Fire and Rescue. It actually took place at Herts County FA ground in Letchworth, so with their support as well. And we had the East Midland Ambulance Service as well. And I was lucky enough to attend on one of the days, and it's just an absolutely fantastic input that's very exciting, very engaging for the children. They sort of move through a whole carousel of inputs, and it absolutely links back, of course, to the idea of prevention, whether it be preventing them getting into serious harm. You know, there's inputs on open water as well, rail safety, a massive thing also, but actually practitioners delivering that on the day. And there was 1,000 pupils over I think a 10-day period in total, and just got some absolutely fantastic feedback from that, and certainly something we're now looking to repeat again. It did used to run pre-COVID, various places around the county, but our plan very much going forward is this becomes a regular occurrence, and to get that level of buy-in from 1,000 children just in this area is absolutely fantastic. And I know it was really well received by those children and by the schools they attended as well. We just move to the next slide. I think we've just put some. Yeah, in terms of outcomes, I mean, some of these are sort of fairly obvious, but yeah, actually giving them experiences of real life situations. So they would run scenarios with the trainers in there. Railway safety, I've mentioned, of course. They'd watch videos, and then there'd be Q&As, and they'd run, you know, particular scenarios. Some more hard-hitting stuff, which you have to be very careful about, around things like knife crime. And, you know, a 10 and 11-year-old is a young person, very much so, but it is sadly something that we do need to have them have a level of awareness about, albeit having seen the input, it's delivered very carefully, but it's absolutely sending the message. And of course, first aid, you know, and they're all taught how to do administer CPR, which is absolutely fantastic from a sort of public safety point of view as well. So it was a big input of resourcing from us, but I think it's about investing. If we're conducting that preventative work now, I'll be saving some demand potentially later down the line, and not only us, but the other parties involved as well. So yeah, very much a resounding success. Thank you. Next slide.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, just to follow on from that, prevention first ethos, and really keeping the engagement quite high. Our CSU department, community safety unit led by Chris Adshead, recently conducted a knife and alcohol test purchasing operation. And we're obviously really fortunate in North Hertfordshire because we have North Herts Council and students that really like to get involved in anything that we can probably get them involved in. And Chris Adshead spoke to North Herts College. We managed to get a few students together from the public service course, which is really beneficial for them because it's part of their curriculum to engage with the local policing teams. And yeah, we conducted a knife and alcohol test amongst different licensed premises across North Herts. So some in Hitchin, some in Letchworth, some in Baldock and Royston. And if you just go to the next slide, perfect, thank you. Yeah, so under 18 students obviously went into different stores trying to buy alcohol and knives. 12 stores were visited across North Hertfordshire. 4 stores failed the operation, and obviously they took a lot of learning. There was enforcement as well from the community safety unit, and it was a really good operation for all the students as well. They really got to see what policing was about, what the consequences for stores who don't follow the license conditions, and it was brilliant. And we've carried that on. We've got a really good relationship with North Herts College, which I'll touch on a bit later on. But it ticked all the boxes for all of the students. They were really, really happy. And ultimately, from a licensing perspective, we can identify the stores that are potentially breaching conditions and work with them to prevent knives and alcohol being sold to those underage. And I believe the next slide is a video. I hope this works. There might be a hyperlink which should go to a web page. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's worked.
You may have to turn it up.
Perfect.
It's got some rather grating guitar music behind it. I apologise in advance.
There should be some audio. Hopefully it's not frozen on.
Yeah, it's better.
Under 18 years old. So today we're out under Ops Sector, which I think, as you're all aware, is a national and local campaign to raise awareness and tackle knife crime in the UK. Obviously a really, really important thing to do. And today we're with students from North Herts College who are both under 18 years old, who've been test purchasing shops and premises in and around North Herts. Today, at this moment in time, we're in Letchworth at Cook's, where you can see they sell a variety of knives, and delighted to say we've been in, done the test purchase, and Cook's passed with flying colours.
Hello, sorry, what is a wire knife for, Mum? You guys have ID?
Not, I mean, not, I've left mine at home.
No, I thought one of you would need ID to buy it.
Oh.
We've got the money. Oh, no, I understand that, but we can't sell it to you. If you look under 25, unfortunately, we can't.
I'm so sorry.
No, you can go and get it, that's not a problem, then we will have it.
There's no way even we can get the knife and come back.
No, there's no way.
They've been pushed quite hard by the young people to see whether they could get cash, get a knife using cash, and they haven't been able to. So hopefully, what today will prove is just how much we're working with the retailers to ensure that there's maximum awareness and minimum amount of sales of knives, and just reduce that threat on our streets.
Just go to the next slide if that's okay. I don't know whether this one will automatically play. Just
click on.
Hopefully it goes to the next page.
Hopefully. This is it. This is the test purchase for
perfect.
PSE.
Yes, great. Yeah, it's on the right slide. So this video is in relation to child sexual exploitation operation, which was another test purchase. There it is, just on screen. So again, we approached North Herts College public service students, again, very happy to engage. And following on from the control strategy, we wanted to focus on identifying any hotels that might not be adhering to the CSE plans that we have. So this video, if you're happy to play that, will just summarise the work for the test purchase being CSE based.
I'm Police Sergeant 2386 Chris Adshead. I'm a Community Safety Unit Sergeant here in North Herts, and this morning we've conducted a series of test purchases across North Herts of hotels and licensed premises in order to test their compliance around signs and signals for child sexual exploitation. We've done this in conjunction with North Herts College, who we're really grateful to, who supplied us students to act as young people in the company of a very age-inappropriate relationship. So somebody of my age going in with somebody of 16, 17 years old, showing all the signs of child sex exploitation. We've sent the information out to hotels in advance around signs and signals for child sex exploitation. This morning's operation has gone really, really well, mainly thanks to the students who've been fantastic. But equally, a lot of the hotels we've been to have been displaying all of the literature we've sent out in advance, which means they're really taking the message seriously. They're doing what they can to try and avoid booking people into rooms and putting the young people into positions of vulnerability.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If you just go to the next slide, if that's okay.
I'm
Play it again. There we go. And just one more time. Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, so this slide is in relation to sort of youth and youth engagement again. And the reason I thought it would be quite a good opportunity to talk about education and crime prevention is in relation to career pathways. And one thing that really helped me was actually, well, I was actually a public service student back in the day, way back when, and I actually had an MPT officer, a neighbourhood officer, come into North Herts College in my public service course, and it really gave me a sense of inspiration. And obviously, having gone through my journey from being a public service student to a special constable, then to a police constable in North Herts, and then to a sergeant, we have a really good working relationship with North Herts College. So I tend to go into the college whenever I can and share that story with the students. And I think it's really important for this generation in particular to see that it's achievable and sort of that ethos of seeing to believe it. So I go into North Herts College as often as I can, give face-to-face education around online crime, how to stay safe online, and actually spread the information around recruitment and support the students with their aspiration to join Hertfordshire Constabulary. And actually, a few of the students in the images have actually become members of either staff or special constables or police officers within Hertfordshire Constabulary, and now they've now taken that opportunity to go into the college and really share their story with North Herts College as well. So it's a really good opportunity to educate the students, share my journey with them, so that they can follow that on and go into the college into the future and support other college students. So seeing it to believe it, I think, is the message there. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Back to me now. Just wanted to talk about this event we ran last year in very close partnership with North Herts Council, Steve Cobb and his colleagues specifically. We've built quite strong relations with the Community Security Trust, which some of you might be aware of already, who deliver a raft of presentations on all sorts of subjects. And we've worked with them before. We delivered a town hall, Hitchin Town Hall event a couple of years ago on VORG and sort of personal safety and under that subject. So having made that connection already with them, we wanted to deliver something to our secondary school leads about two really key areas. Firstly is the increasing concern about the incel movement. Some of you may be aware of that. Some of you may not be, but the emergence of that as a risk, particularly amongst teenage boys, particularly. So of course, that's the secondary sort of way into that. And is there a sufficient enough awareness of what the incel movement actually is, and also how to spot the signs of someone who may be becoming influenced by that movement? And then in parallel with that, we've managed to establish a relationship with a charity called Dignify, who are based in Watford, but we managed to get them to come and deliver a joint input with the CST, and their expertise is around online safety. We're talking about helping children to understand the impact of sharing intimate pictures, could have sexual harassment, pornography, and helping to working to help young people not to normalise sexual objectification and abuse. And they go into schools to provide education packages at the different key stages. There is a charge for that. And Steve and Chris Adstead, who helped deliver this, went into the PCC and managed to obtain a significant amount of funding to enable the schools to take that training for free. So they secured £5,000. So we had an input actually in this room, which was absolutely brilliant. I think we had a representative from every secondary school in North Herts. They had both inputs, and as I understand it, every bit of funding has now been used. They were so impressed with the training, and it all feeds back again about we get that awareness up now at the right age, whether we're looking to spot the signs who may be at risk of someone who may be at risk of entering a very, very unhealthy and unsavory movement. But equally, we have so often, from a police point of view, we so often see reports of exchanges of messages between young children and images that they probably have no clue that are even technically unlawful. So Dignify, they have gone into all those schools now with their packages to help raise that awareness and hopefully bring that level of reporting down. I think there's a video on this slide as well, just about this event.
Of a group called JAG, which is the Joint Action Group. It's a group made up of responsible authorities, so the police, council, housing associations, education, health service, fire, and Herts County Council sit on there, and we work in partnership to try and resolve issues of crime and disorder within North Herts.
My name is Police Sergeant Chris Adstead, and I'm the Community Safety Unit Sergeant for North Hertfordshire. This morning we've been hosting an event with North Herts Council under JAG to promote the Prevention First mantra of violence against women and girls, and try and reduce violence against women and girls at the grassroots by having the education establishments in secondary schools represented, as long as some health professionals, and give them a little introduction into the dangers of sending intimate pictures of yourself to others, into the normalisation of pornography, and also some information about the incel movement.
It was raised at meetings that the main issue is education, particularly of young males. Whilst we could try and prevent females becoming victims, we decided we needed to educate young males, particularly in their behaviours towards women and girls. As a result of some funding that we managed to obtain from the Police and Crime Commissioner, which was greatly received, we've managed to put on this event today, the presentation by Dignify and also by the Community Security Trust, to hopefully raise awareness, particularly amongst the schools, regarding issues that they can address to hopefully reduce offending. Hello, my name's John Marshall. I'm the Community...
Play them again. Thank you. The next slide just gives a brief flavour of some of the feedback. All of this feedback came from the school leads. I don't know if you're able to just bring the slide up for me. And we can, it just should be one more and then one more after that. There we go. Yeah, incredibly informative. More complex issue than thought. We very much picked up on that, particularly around the input around the incel movement. Very well organised, very welcoming, good update, plenty of key positive words. I won't dwell on it, but it just showed it was well worth the time and effort, and a really great bit of joint working with those partners and also North Herts Council as well. Thank you.
Then we've just got a number of slides with various photos about different engagement events that we've had with youths over the year, whether it be at schools, fates, events, football matches we had up at King James. So we'll just be able to see some of those and flick through. Perfect.
Yes, and then just a few words about the coming year, if you're able to just move to the next slide. Obviously, you saw the control strategy earlier. I think in the context of this presentation, our focus really is the top left slice, which is prevent harm, crime and offending. So we're looking at VORG, domestic abuse, children and young people exploitation, criminal exploitation, county lines, ASB, and you can see that that can touch youths. Every single element of that can touch the youths, and it's very much around how we tackle some of this and continue. I hope you're seeing some of the great work that's happened last year, or just last year, but there's always more to be done. If I focus on VORG for a minute, obviously it's violence against women and girls. That brings it in as relevance to this topic. We know that female youths can be victims of domestic abuse and other non-domestic violent offences, sexual offences as well, and also often be witness to some pretty terrible offences. So it's very much we need to focus on women and we need to focus on girls, and that's very much our driver for the following year. And one significant development is the introduction on the CSP of the first ever VORG multi-agency scrutiny panel that will be meeting for the first time in February, led by Chris Adshead, who you've been seeing quite a lot in the videos tonight. There's going to be representatives of that group from Hertfordshire Constabulary, the PCC's office, North Herts Council, local charities, other local support organisations. They're going to come together at Hitchin Police Station. And what they're going to do is they're going to review and discuss two reports of crime, one that's going to be domestic abuse related and one non-domestic abuse. It's going to be a violent crime involving women or girls. And what they're essentially going to do is evaluate every aspect of that report from the first call into the police all the way through to our attendance, how we've then investigated it, what's then happened at the end of it. Has there been a charge? If it's gone to court, what is the outcome there? They'll be viewing body-worn footage of officers that have attended, and it's all about identifying where we've got things right, but also are there still areas for improvement around how we are dealing with these types of offences. I think this is a really powerful way forward, and also to be able to involve other partners more openly is tap into others' expertise as well. I think is going to be something that we can really sort of tap into. So yeah, the first panel is February. We wait to see how that goes. Always asking for me, can we do better? And we can hit the best practice often, but are we hitting it consistently, and are we hitting it in this particular crime type, and in particular in relation to the risk that use female and males are being victims of crime or being exploited into crime? And just probably touching on the criminal exploitation and the young people exploitation, another quite significant news coming back to Jackie Hickman from our Children and Young Persons team. She's going to be delivering PHSE training into local secondary schools in North Herts for the first time ever. And that starts in spring 25. It's part of a new scheme supported by King's College London and Cardiff University. And some funding has been awarded by the Youth Endowment Fund. And they are going to go into schools and actually formally deliver part of the PHSE curriculum, which has never happened before, on specific topics. So year 7 and 8 will get inputs on personal safety, particularly around drugs, and again linking back to the vulnerability to getting involved in county lines. Also understanding of the law around drugs, which often there seems to be some misunderstanding, particularly at that young age, and knife crime, and how to prevent violence, being involved in violent situations. That's going to be delivered to years 9, 10 and 11. And as I said, that's going to be formally part of the PHSE curriculum for the first time. So very much feeding into that prevention first ethos. And just to say again, the test purchases you've seen, we've got more planned. There's another alcohol one happening in February. The CSE one, it's particularly important to me for the hotel test purchases. We are one of the only CSPs that do this in the whole county, and I think it just sends such a powerful message to those premises that we take this matter seriously, and the prevention of our youth becoming involved in those types of dreadful offences is absolutely top of the list for us, along with knife crime with our next Operation Sceptre happening this year. So yeah, that's just a flavour of the future. Thank you. And yeah,
there's definitely a few points. Yeah, just to sort of follow on from that, I think giving youths a voice has been at the forefront of what we've recognised could be better going into 2025. And I think for some of the councillors in the room, I've definitely spoken about youth engagement and MPT priority. So our PSFs they've been quite similar, I think, over the last few years. And on reflection, when I joined MPT, I really thought, actually, are we engaging with the younger demographics in the way that we should be? And historically, what we've done is we've had priorities that are often born from our messages and systems which youth simply aren't using. I don't know any teenager that logged onto OWL or anything like that. It was Instagram, social media. That's the common platform that they're using. So what we looked at was engagement around our PSFs, and I believe we're one of the only CSPs now that are doing active engagement with the younger demographic to understand what their concerns are in the community. And born out of a conversation with Councillor Bryant as well, we're now actively engaging with Priory School to get them to touch base with their students in the way that they see fit, because they know their students better than anyone, but to give them a voice and to understand what their concerns are in the community, so we can take that feedback on board and set a priority for a younger generation, perhaps a middle generation, and then an older generation, because our PSF should be representative of the community that we police. And actually, the younger generation really haven't had much of a say in our priorities. So I believe we're one of the only CSPs, one of the first CSPs who are taking that approach. And that's active as we speak. And we're designing videos to present to the Priory School so they can play in assembly, and hopefully using systems like Hearts Connected, they can scan a QR code, they can put whatever they want to put on that document. They can document as many sort of concerns as they've got. That will be fed into the engagement system that we hold within Hertfordshire, which has replaced OWL, and then that will land on my desk with Sergeant Clark, and we will have a look at what their concerns are, and that will hopefully for the next PSF, that will be the first PSF where we've got youth engagement, and then we can steer our neighbourhood policing team into the direction that the youths want us to focus on. Whether that's online, whether that's boredom in the community or antisocial behaviour, or reasons for antisocial behaviour, we will be the first CSP to potentially do that. So we're very proud of promoting that.
That makes sense.
And that's it. So thank you for your time. And any questions?
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah.
Silence.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Excellent. It's always a good session when you come along. So thank you very much. Councillor Bartos.
Thank you. That was a really interesting presentation, and it's great to hear particularly about the focus on violence against women and girls. I feel like there's a lot of influences out there, particularly for young people online, with people like Andrew Tate, that really encourage that misogyny, and that's really embedded amongst young people and plays out all the time. So I was wondering whether you do or are considering recording misogyny as a specific factor in a crime. I think this is something that would be really helpful when looking at trends and working out where the focus needs to go.
Certainly from a crime recording aspect, it's not a criteria that's listed specifically, but it's certainly something I can feed back around that question, because it would need to come nationally to then sit within the subset of crime recording. So for example, we'll have certain flags such as hate crime, DA, and within that there are other flags that can be ticked to reflect the certain modus operandi of the crime. But for some reason, and I think you're right, things like Andrew Tate, and it's very much two sides of the fence. Some will be absolutely in awe of his views and how he does things, and others will be in utter amazement that this man is allowed to exist and preach as he does. So I mean, having come from I used to head up the DA unit in Hertfordshire, and it's really difficult because there are so many different aspects, but we do have a DA task and finish group, so I can feed that back in and have that conversation around nationally. Has that been raised? Are those conversations happening around certain misogynistic triggers? So that the subtle influences, because obviously the legislation changed a number of years ago around coercive controlling, which very much started to recognise the more subtleties of domestic abuse. But yeah, I can absolutely take that away. That's not a problem. It's not raised yet, but I can ask that.
Yeah.
There is admittedly a minority of police forces, but there are other places in the country where they take that as a factor and are kind of part of that movement to spearhead that legislative change. So that feedback would be great.
Absolutely, not a problem.
And I think just to follow up on that point, there is a lot of school engagement that's already taken place. So when we look at Operation Dignify and we look at what the Children's Society are doing, we obviously have a close working relationship with other charities that, although aren't delivered by us directly, they do still have a say in in what they're delivering into schools. And I've previously, when I was in Royston, worked with the Children's Society to deliver very similar training in certain schools. Although that's not obviously national, we do connect with our charities quite well, and we have a good relationship with our teachers and support staff, that if they do come to us and say we actually would like a particular type of presentation, we wouldn't struggle to reach out to charities and get that support if we're not the subject matter experts in that field.
Just to mention about Andrew Tate, he was brought up by the Community Security Trust at the INCEL, but it was quite clear there was a very mixed understanding from the school leads there as to how much they really knew about him. Some were very clued up, but others, not, I'm not going to use the word ignorant, but had only very limited knowledge. So, you know, that message was sent in that input for them to be aware of that name and aware of that face and the malign influence he can have on impressionable young boys, which is unquestionable.
I think that's also, sorry to interrupt, I think that's also where the MPT team come in as well. As being a neighbourhood policing sergeant, we're very reliant on our PCSOs and our PCs having an effective relationship with the schools. So when they're in the schools and they're walking around in the school grounds, if they're picking up on a particular type of vibe or a particular type of conversation, they can come back into the neighbourhood policing team supervisors, and we can signpost them to those charities. And we have had conversations in particular schools in sort of the playground, for example, which have led to me going into the school and delivering talks about revenge porn, for example, which has been quite sort of, you know, prolific in the last few months. So the neighbourhood policing team engagement with the school is quite key. So neighbourhood policing really does have a big part to play in education.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant, did you want to come in?
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was really good. We are so lucky in North Herts to have such a good team. We're so responsive to suggestions. But can I say that we've also got officers that are working on this, and it's within my portfolio as communication, communities and partnerships. And I'm a member of the Police and Crime Commissioners panel that meets every 2 months. So if there, for councillors and for police, is anything that's on a larger scale that you want to have raised, please pass it by me and we'll see at which level it can be raised. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wright Mason.
Yeah, again, just want to thank you. Very useful. I did Crucial Crew in Hitchin about 15 years ago. And also it was very formative. I still think about it sometimes. Although there was a section about not drinking, didn't go so well. But it was very good. Yes, I mean, Councillor Bartois sort of touched on, obviously you've spoken a lot about that sort of incel sort of stuff. But I think, you know, I have a lot of friends who are teachers, obviously some teachers and former teachers in this room, but it seems like sort of political radicalization side almost adds another sinister element to it. I know there's like the sort of prevent program, stuff like that. I just wonder if that's another sort of aspect of that work you do, or whether that's sort of issues that come up.
I mean, you've mentioned prevent already. So of course there's the referral mechanism into there. We don't necessarily get directly involved in individual cases. It depends on what the circumstances are leading to the referral. We do get invited to the prevent meetings. So I'm happy to say it is rare for me to attend a North Herts prevent meeting, very rare, which I would say you can take as a positive. I don't think it's underreporting at all. I think very happily it's very limited footprint here. But where they do have one, we go to give that local input and get a briefing on what the challenges are and whether we need to put any sort of problem solving around that particular individual. But it is, because prevent team, they are the experts. It's not an area that, you know, that sort of political radicalization you're talking about, along with incel radicalization, is that aspect is not something that we are closely connected with, unless it starts to impact on the local CSP. And if it does, then absolutely we would be involved. It's just like a case-by-case assessment, but primarily led by prevent.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor? Yeah.
So I suppose, would you refer to prevent, or would that be a sort of separate parallel?
There's multi-channel referral mechanisms into prevent. So yes, we can do as one statutory body, education can, health can. If we encounter someone that we feel might be exhibiting those signs, then absolutely we've got a legal responsibility to report, as has every other partner in the legislation. So yes, when it's presented to us, thankfully rarely, the referral must follow, and it does. And then it goes into prevent, they triage it, they run some checks, and they decide whether or not to send it to a panel, which is called channel. And that's the meeting that I was referring to earlier, and that's where they're reviewed and a decision made. Are they going to be managed in some way? Are they going to be discharged? Is there going to be another way of sending them back out into another partner agency, perhaps to deal with? But yeah, that's not something I've got a huge sort of level of expertise on, but that's the basic sort of framework of how it works. So yes, we will refer if we need to.
Yeah, great. That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to follow on that, we do have prevent champions as well that are based in areas.
Yeah, we do.
So we have officers who are trained to a slightly higher standard, and they are on our directory. So if there's a PCSO or a junior member of police staff that might need a bit of guidance, we have those spots on area that they can turn to as well. So there should be no one that's querying what to do or how to do the referral.
And I think just a bit more holistically on that, whether it's the misogyny, microaggressions, the radicalisation, it's those really strong relationships we've got with the college, with the schools, to try and identify any potential triggers or concerns at a really early stage. Does it need a more formal referral? Is it some prevention, education, one of the sort of sub-departments within the constabulary that we can turn to for some support, so we can put that real holistic wraparound to try and prevent anything further from happening.
Okay. Councillor Allen.
Thank you very much for letting me come in, Chair. I just want to say how much our daughter really enjoyed doing the mini police.
It was on one of the slides.
It was indeed. She found it really, really good and got a much better idea of what policing was. I think I've seen lots of very good feedback around that. And I just also wanted to comment quickly while we had you here on how excellent the PCSOs and the officers on the beat in Letchworth have been recently.
Brilliant.
Very, very impressed with them. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was really impressed by how universal a lot of the offerings that you have are. We hear a lot about the targeted kind of at-risk interventions that you have, but I didn't know very much about any of what you talked about. And how do you measure the effectiveness of the programs that you put in place? Obviously, prevention's a difficult thing to measure, isn't it?
That's difficult, and I think
how do you know it's working?
Crime types, we obviously have your bog standard crime, and again, a reduction in crime isn't always a good thing. So, for example, I've been at a performance meeting today, and we talked about domestic abuse. Domestic abuse crime is up in not just North Herts, can I just say? However, having worked within the DA world, that isn't always a bad thing, because the argument is if we've got more crime, hopefully we've got more confidence in reporting and victims coming forward. So with certainly in that crime type, it's a pinch of salt. So that's a good thing for us, because we know we're then getting more victims coming forward. We can put more prevention support, more wraparound, more convictions, etc. So there'll be certain amount of, ASB will look at youth ASB. Is that an issue? Is that coming down? What are we being told by residents? What are we being told at the PSFs? Is that a priority for our local communities? And I always find it quite interesting, because how many months ago, about 4 months ago, we did the e-scooter.
Yeah.
I will follow the local Facebook pages for the local towns, even though I live in Bedfordshire. Boo. And for example, on the We Love Letchworth Facebook page, there will be a string of people going, "This is outrageous, e-scooters. What are the police doing about this? They've got nothing better to do." We run an operation and we deal with it, and we see scooters and we deal, and then we get a string of people saying, "This is outrageous, and the police got nothing better to do. They're penalising people on e-scooters." I'm sat there in DMM going, "We really can't win." So it's difficult, because different people have priorities, but we'll look at the crime, we'll look at the ASB, we'll look at that level of engagement. I think the test purchase operations are really good, because they will very holistically look at whether it's alcohol, whether it's knife, whether it's the hotels. One of the other operations that Sergeant Adshead runs is op taxi. So we'll get some of the female college students who will go as if they've come out of the train station to take a taxi on a really short journey, and it's testing the taxi drivers to see. A lot of them will refuse if they know it's a short journey and it's not going to yield a high fare for them, but they shouldn't do, because there's a risk around, obviously late at night with the young females. So again, we'll run those operations to see, from a safety perspective, are we then leaving those females vulnerable? So we'll look at a number of different arenas and outlets. So some of it is quite measurable, some of it not so much, but I think the low levels of things like the prevent referrals are good.
Yes.
High levels of DA are good, but as long as they're matched with high levels of outcomes and positive disposal. So it will be a a raft of different, and then just trying to bring in some more richness to that analysis. So the Vaughan Scrutiny panel, that actually, as James said, from start to finish, are we getting it right? Are we giving a quality service to that victim? Could we have enhanced that at any point? Can we take that learning forward? So we're always open to, you know, Councillor Bryant, you know, where are we missing something? What are we not tapping into? We know historically our NPTs, and I say historically, certainly not when I've been here, but have been, you know, out in the rules. We'll go and have a cup of tea with the elderly community. The Hearts connected data, what that now gives us, it's really helpful because we get returns monthly that can tell us what percentage of this age bracket are we engaging with, what percentage of you know, this race, religion, area, demographics. So all those demographics are broken down for us to see where are we hitting it right and where have we got some vulnerability and we need to tap into. So then that can really help us focus what we're missing, and we can then hopefully hear those unheard voices to focus going forward.
Thanks very much. Councillor Munster.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for the commitment that you continue to show to our communities. Could I just approach this from a different angle with respect to disposals? Because I'm sure we can all agree that actually we want to try and keep people out of the criminal justice system. And obviously one of the ways to do that is out of court disposals. Now, I was on a briefing, I think it was a couple of months ago, and Hertfordshire has one of the best rates for youth out of court disposals. I was just wondering, with respect to North Herts, how do we compare with respect to sort of the other districts? Because I know particularly sort of, you know, youth justice, there are a lot of different organisations and agencies of which are designated to try and keep these young people out of criminality and offending. But from a North Herts perspective, how does that look?
We are within the top few for out of court disposals in terms of the 10 CSPs. There is a piece of work ongoing at the moment, which ironically I started last year around overall across all crime types, raising out of court disposals. That's now been progressed with a team of restricted officers in terms of trying to drive that up, because what we're seeing is we're maybe not getting the more court-based outcomes as we shouldn't be, because of the backlogs with the courts and the prisons. We'll often wait 6 months and then the disposal at court probably could have been the same as had we dealt with it via out of court. So we're really trying to push that in terms of satisfaction for our victims, because again, a lot of our victims may say to us, I don't want to go to court, but then if we properly explain the process around those out of court disposals, well, actually it could just be, here's an apology, there's a letter, etc., the satisfaction levels from our victims are much greater when we set those expectations for the out of court disposals, and they can be dealt with in a much timely manner. So we are sitting well. We've got an out of court disposal spot within our CSP, which is on our LCU. So it's one of our detective sergeants. He's our SPOC, and I'm currently working with him and my detective inspector around how we can try and push that a little bit more within the CSP across, you know, youth and older. We are lucky because we've got the children and young people team, so they will proactively identify any crime that involves a young offender. They will endorse the crime and say, this could be eligible for, based on their previous offending, not known, etc., please come into us. And then we feed into them and work with them to do that. So we want to try and push that some more, but also, again, across the other age groups, because it will then hopefully help create satisfaction, reduce time on officers, which then gives us more time to focus on other areas as well.
And would I just be able to ask a second question relating to a different issue now, and organised crime and sort of county lines gangs? Because I know particularly on the Bedford line, for example, you know, you have a lot of youngsters in Luton who get radicalised, they're groomed, and then they sort of either go and commit offences in, for example, St Albans or Harpenden. With respect to sort of North Herts, is that something that we're seeing here? Is there quite a significant prevalence of, you know, young people being groomed and radicalised by organised crime? And if so, what's being done to resolve it? Not youth-based.
No. So we have 2 organised crime groups that are mapped within North Herts at the moment. One is held by our serious and organised crime group, and one is held locally with the CSP. We are at the point with that, and that is a drugs-based organised crime group, but adult, not juvenile. We're not seeing juveniles being utilised, whereas I know other areas have seen exactly that. We do get a lot of cross-border offending from Bedfordshire. but it's generally not youths. It's more a sort of a adult gangs, burglaries, vehicle crime, those sorts of crime types and offending. I think we're quite lucky. Stevenage, I think, tend to get hit a lot with juveniles being used with drug running and coming up from London on the train line. Us, not so much, and certainly from the intelligence reviews that we do, that's not what we've seen, hopefully.
Correct. And just to follow up on that point, one of the bubbles was the top left-hand corner, which was NCLIC, the National County Lines Coordination Centre. So we have a SPOC within North Herts on one of them that will actually attend the NCLIC meetings. So if the intelligence picture changes and we think that we've got a few that, you know, might come over from the Beds border, we can get ahead of that curve really quickly. And we have a great relationship with British Transport Police. So if they pick up any individuals that are on the train lines because of checks that they can do with railway tickets, we have a really good line of communication with them. So we can get ahead of the curve quite quick. And we have previously in Royston, when I was in Royston as well. So it's proven and it works really well.
Thank you. And we'll make this the last question, just conscious of time. Councillor Claydon, thank you.
I was going to ask one question of my own and pass on one question from a colleague who's not here. Am I allowed to do that? So my question, thank you. First of all, thank you all very much for your time and for your presentation. Much appreciated. My question's a very simple question. I don't know whether the answer will be simple. What's the most helpful thing that we can do for to help you as ward councillors?
Answer that. I think being the voice for the community is the most important thing. And I think with the plan of the youth PSF, and I believe I sent an email out a few months ago, things just naturally got delayed because of Christmas and sort of peak period, but really being the eyes and ears from the community would be really beneficial. And I think once the youth PSF plan is up and running and we've got that embedded in that standard practice, what I would really love to see is a closer relationship with councillors and ward PCs and ward PCSOs. That would be amazing. So what I vision Hitchin to be, because that's really my area, Hitchin urban and rural, is for an email to go to the schools to say, play the video that we sent you a few months ago. The students can then scan the QR code and they do their engagement. On top of that, we have the ward PCs and ward PCSOs who can do ward rounds with their councillors. And whether that's door knocking, whether that's going to mother meetings, for example, engaging with all of the different demographics to populate and put on Hearts Connected as many thoughts and concerns and feelings as possible, so that when we review our PSFs, we're working with a really large amount of data. Whereas at the moment, the data is very small and historically only really relying on OWL, which would maybe return 50 or 60 messages. I think a closer relationship with ward officers would be incredible. And that would, I think the public would really value that as well.
I think I'd be happy to emphasise that point as well. If we could really build those ward level relationships, I've been trying to do that for a number of years, and there are some great relationships with a number of councillors, including a number sitting here right now. But it's still it's patchy, and we'd love it that is really embedded properly at that ward level, officer, PCSO, councillor, that trio. I think could really make quite a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
very happy to play my part in that. I think you can.
On a really functional level, what we've tried hard to push is, for me, the best way for us to get the public to trust us is that they feel we're listening to them and we're doing something about it. So every morning at our performance meeting, we will discuss anything that comes through on Hearts Connected. So if someone puts something in, we've had three submissions on Hearts Connected around ASBUs in Bancroft Park. The MPT will then task out, right, let's put someone in Bancroft Park, and we'll then do those patrols and we'll try and push something out on social media with a hashtag "you said we did." So we're essentially saying to the public, you're not happy with this, you're moaning about that, we're listening and we're doing something. But if you don't tell us, can't solve the problem on our own, because if we don't know what the problem is, we're just literally stabbing in the dark. So I think that increased engagement and you encouraging people to come and talk to us even more, that some will trust us, some won't, but with your help and support, hopefully more will trust us, and that will just build that engagement and we get a much better, richer picture of what the actual problems are.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so the passed on question. Just you've talked a lot about a lot of great community engagement stuff today, which is fantastic to hear about. But my colleague was just speaking to his PCSO, who's based in Nebworth recently, and got the impression that there were plans for more sort of engagement events, specifically about priority setting in this over the course of this year. Just wondering whether you could say a quick word about that.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So what we now have running, it's already up and running, is dedicated days where our teams will focus on their current PSF cycle. So whereas before we were struggling to find sufficient time to really get in amongst the weeds of some of these problems, and sometimes maybe tinkering around the edges a little bit, these dedicated days now actually enable the whole team to come together. So, you know, we could use an example of speeding, which I think we have in, you know, which area we try to zone in on particular areas of speeding. We fire the resources into that, and they are there for that day, visible. We are here, we are listening, and we are taking action. The next team comes back, you know, 3 weeks later. It's happening on a regular cycle. Those officers are ring fenced and dedicated solely to tackle those particular priorities. And then, of course, most importantly, is comms out to the public to say, you said we did, see it, say it, sort it. You know, we are here absolutely responding to you, and here is the evidence of that. And the teams are loving it. It seems to be we're making far more progress than we were. It's been a real improvement for us over the last year, and arguably it was an idea of Taz's, I have to say. Arguably we should have introduced it a lot sooner, but it's really bearing fruit now. I'm hoping the public perception is that we are actually dedicating decent amounts of time to these priorities.
Yeah. The other thing is, I guess, if we again, if we know about it, we can help with raising it in advance. So letting people know in advance that this is going to happen, then people can come along and you know,
you'll be more
engage.
than welcome. I'm suggesting through the skippers now. Let's invite the councillors as well. Absolutely. And so again, is that a way to build those relationships? Absolutely, it is.
Just don't tell them about the speeding in advance.
No. You do.
It's not about the money. I was just saying, and otherwise we
Yeah.
just get the same people. It's a bit like people that park outside schools, but when the traffic wardens are there or the MPT, they never park outside schools, and then we never solve the problem.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Okay. Well, thank you again very much for coming along and speaking to us, and for all the work that you're doing in the community as well. It's really, really appreciated. We'll close that item there, and thanks for your contributions as well, everybody. We're going to take a break before we carry on. We'll take maybe 5-minute break and then come back. Okay. Thanks very much. We're going to start again now. Okay, thank you, everybody. We move on to item 14, which is the Council Delivery Plan 2024 to 25 Q2 update, with Councillor Ian Albert to present.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'm going to obviously ask Mr. Cooper to cover the detail in the report, but what I wanted just to say at at the start of this item, Chair, is that I think the council delivery plan has developed really, I think, very much on the basis with some really hugely important input from this committee and its ideas. I think we've tried to simplify it. We've tried to, I think, really to sort of target into the key issues, highlight where there are significant changes, and then I think really in there, hopefully that this is something that this committee and indeed obviously cabinet find useful, and I certainly here sort of recommend, and obviously for colleagues here and group leaders and so on to obviously do recommend to your colleagues to take a look at this paper, because I think it gives a good snapshot of what the key issues the council is trying to progress, where we are on them, and with updates sort of set out there. But obviously happy just to hand over to Mr. Cooper just to provide you with a little bit more detail on some of the individual items.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Albert. I will just be fairly brief. I appreciate you want to do an update on the PSDS project as part of this, so I'll probably focus mainly on that, or let Sarah focus mainly on that, but I will do a brief introduction. So the executive summary tries to kind of pick out the main points of the report. So in that we look at delivering against milestones, whether we've changed the milestones, and also the key bits around performance indicators. So the bottom of the executive summary first to paragraph 8.4, we do have one red indicator and the actions in place against that. Obviously, the idea of the indicators is that when they go red, we take them seriously and take action against them. We also still have two indicators that are both marginally amber. They're marginally amber in the last quarter and are still the same degree as slightly amber. And therefore, we've also detailed the actions against those as well that we're doing to address those. In previous versions of the report, we have provided, and I'm now referring to the appendix, a brief summary that lists out all the projects at the start of the documents as to what status they're in, so a list and then the various status against them. That was taken out of Q1 because they were all green, and it seemed to be pointless to have a list of all greens. I should have added it back in for this quarter because we now have 6 green indicators and 5 amber ones. But I forgot to, so we'll add that back in for the next quarter. We do list them in the report in order, so you get the 5 amber ones are listed first as you go for the detail, and then the 6 green ones come afterwards. We do put them in that order, sort of so the focus is on those that are sort of slightly slipping against the milestones, and obviously do get any red indicator, we'll put those right at the front of that report. So yeah, obviously if there are any questions or any of the detail in there, happy to try and answer them. But otherwise, I can either ask Sarah now to do an update on the PSDS one, or we can take questions first, yeah, for your preference.
I think let's do the update on the PSDS first, if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will try and be brief, but you hopefully have all seen the cabinet paper. So essentially we're at the stage in the design of the project where the MEP designers are looking at the heat pumps, and they have identified a significant increase in the projected running costs of those heat pumps. another issue that has been identified, which is to do with the Salix, the conditions of the Salix grant, is as currently spec'd, the heat pumps are 15 to 20% less efficient than the large bespoke heat pumps. So what we're currently looking at is heat pumps that can be delivered off the shelf, because you remember that we have a front-loaded grant, so that we have to spend the vast majority of our grant in year one. And to date, the advice we have been given is that in order to claim that funding, we need evidence in the form of what is called a vesting certificate, which basically is like almost like a proof of ownership certificate, to say that the spend has been incurred in the correct financial year and that we as the council own that asset. We don't necessarily have to have the asset delivered in this financial year, but we have to have that vesting certificate. So throughout the programme, Wilmot Dixon identified that they couldn't design the bespoke heat pumps in time in the programme to get the vesting certificate for this year, if that makes sense. Which is why they've spec'd the smaller heat pumps, but as I say, they are 15 to 20% less efficient. So we're now in a position where they've updated their running costs, and you will see in the cabinet report there are a couple of tables, which are table 1 and table 2, which are based on a sort of best case and worst case scenario of increase in running costs. However, there is a caveat to all of the figures in the tables, in that they currently, as stated, don't include the impact of the additional improvements to the leisure centres that we are undertaking. So, for example, the insulation, and Wilmot Dixon are currently working on those figures, and I should have those figures by close of play tomorrow. My intention is to submit an addendum report to Cabinet with the updated figures. My intention is also to update, you'll see on table 3, we have the same scenario with the bigger heat pumps, which is looking at what the increase in running costs would be if we could order the bigger heat pumps. So we have 4 options in the report.
I was under the impression, Chair, that we're on the council delivery plan. We're not on that agenda item, and therefore I don't want us to get mixed up unless it's me who's confused.
The decarbonisation project, the reason we're discussing this now is the decarbonisation project is on the council delivery plan. This is quite a significant development to that, so I asked for a verbal update.
Okay, but I fear the specifics of what Sarah's getting into would probably be better placed when we're discussing the contents of the report, because, for example, I don't have it in front of me. I'm just looking at the council delivery plan.
Understood. Okay. I think I would like you to continue still.
Okay. There's 4 options on the report, which you will see. If you go to option 4, which I would just talk about very briefly, option 4 would be the recommendation that I would put to Cabinet if we can make that work. So essentially that is saying we're basically exploring with Salix currently, and we have a request in with Salix currently. Can we, instead of providing a vesting certificate, can we order the larger bespoke heat pumps basically and pay for them in advance? So that's at the council's risk, pay for them in advance, so that, and will they then accept that we have incurred the spend in this financial year? Therefore, will that meet their conditions that they will then pay the grant for those items? So if we can get confirmation from Salix that that is an option, then obviously that would be the recommendation, as I said, that we would put to Cabinet, and that would be in my addendum report to Cabinet as the preferred option, because although there is an increase in running costs, it is not as significant as ordering the smaller heat pumps and facing the extremely significant increase. So again, I will have that information in time for Cabinet. I will also have information from Wilmot Dixon to confirm that they can design and order the bespoke heat pumps prior to March 2025 to make sure that we can meet that timeline. The only other point I wanted to make was there is another option for Cabinet in the event that we can't do option 4. There is another option being put forward around Royston Leisure Centre, because you will see in the report that actually Royston Leisure Centre is the only one of the 3 sites where we still would make a small saving on current running costs using the small heat pumps. And therefore, in order to retain some of the grant, we could look at an option just to do Royston Leisure Centre only. So that's where I am. And as I say, there will be a bit more detail provided to Cabinet prior to Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate we're in a difficult position because we don't have all the information, and nor do you. I feel like it's important to consider this and at least have an opportunity to ask questions, although I know that everybody had relatively short notice of this this evening. Does anyone have any questions? I guess first on the PSDS decarbonisation project, and then we can talk to the wider delivery plan report. Councillor Claydon.
Presumably deferral of the grant is not possible. You can't just, it's not possible to simply extend the timeframe.
No, we can't extend the time frame, and we can't. You can't carry over your grant allocation from one year to the next. We have had absolute confirmation from Salix that they won't allow that.
Councillor Peace.
Yeah, forgive me, this is probably in the report and I just haven't managed to extract the data. But so we've got an increase in running costs with the small heat pumps, but there would still be an increase in running cost with the big heat pumps that we want. What's the comparison of the increase of the big and the little?
So just I will tell you, but bearing in mind that they're not the final figures because they don't, but in general terms at the minute, we're looking at a range of between around £150,000 a year increase to £320,000 a year increase using the smaller heat pumps. With the larger heat pumps, we're looking currently at around a £70,000 increase overall. But again, we are asking Wilmot Dixon if there is a range similar to the range there is for the smaller ones. So they're again going to come back to us with that information.
Councillor Mansell.
So if we were to go ahead just with the Royston Leisure Centre and obviously then remove the changes at Hitchin and Letchworth, we obviously approve the additional expenditure of 750,000 to break the contract for the old gas CHPs. Has that been actioned as of yet?
No, we haven't given Centrica notice of that. We only have to, we weren't planning to give them notice until we had the definite timeline of the programme.
Yeah. And I note that those CHPs, I believe from the report, they're coming to their end of life. No, am I incorrect?
Sorry, the CHPs are not end of life. So the agreement on the CHPs is until 2035. It's the gas boilers that are end of life.
Right.
And unfortunately, the criteria well, it's not unfortunate, but the criteria in the PSDS is that you can't have gas in. So you can't have gas. So if we installed new gas boilers at North Herts Leisure Centre or Hitchin Swim Centre, we would be ineligible for future rounds of funding.
And what's the lifespan on the centres? So for 3 of the leisure centres, when is it anticipated that they need demolishing and rebuilding?
We did have, I'll ask Ian, but we did have condition surveys done on the leisure centres prior to the start of the new contract, and they haven't identified any major issues, but I'll let Ian comment on the.
Yeah, we have to do a lot of work on leisure centres in terms of the investment through the capital programme on them, and some of this is going to replace quite a lot of the fabric of the building in terms of lots of walls and windows and things like that. So at the moment, we are not foreseeing there being an end of life for leisure centres. Yeah, we're assuming that the life of the leisure centre will be long enough such that we can essentially take the cost of the capital over a 40-year period. So assuming that with the work we do regularly on the buildings, we can keep them going for that kind of length of time.
Forgive me, I know this is somewhat of a tangent, but have we considered rationalisation of the leisure centres and potentially closing 2 of them and building a more energy efficient leisure centre in one of either Hitchin or Letchworth?
It's not something we've considered, no.
Councillor Claydon.
Thank you. So I did ask about running costs, relative running costs of the heat pumps when this was previously at ONS, and I think at that time the figures weren't available. So it's good to see them, but it was slightly also simultaneously quite confusing. Do I understand correctly from these numbers that we'd expect Royston to be cheaper to run under the with the heat pumps than currently, but the other 2 to be significantly more expensive? Why is that?
Yes, you are correct. That is correct. And I will get an answer on that. But my non-technical head, and this is just my thinking of why this is it's because of the gas CHPs at North Herts and Hitchin. So Royston doesn't have a gas CHP. Obviously, although they're gas, they're super efficient. So taking those out and then converting that energy to electricity and the cost of that grid electricity, I think, is what's tipping the balance. That's my, as I say, my non-technical perspective, but I will get a formal answer on that.
Okay, so just on that, so the gas CHPs that, and they're not at Royston, so the Centrica contract that would be cancelled would continue in option 3 would continue. You'd continue with this, then we wouldn't incur the termination costs of that. Is that correct?
Yes, if you went for option 3, which was to only do Royston Leisure Centre, in the first instance, you will continue with the gas CHPs, and the termination fee would gradually reduce as that contract nears its end.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this project? No. Okay. I will ask one more question just on the project more broadly, not on the decarbonisation aspect, but on the closures. Could you provide some details on what the planned closures are for the centres during the works?
In short, I can't provide any detail on the planned closure currently. Prior to Christmas, we had a workshop with Everyone Active and Wilmot Dixon, where we talked in detail about how to minimise disruption to customers and how we could schedule those works at optimal times. So, for example, things we have discussed are actually in the event of needing to close the change village, could we cope without wet change facilities for a number of weeks, which would avoid us having to close the pools? So, we have done this before, where we've asked parents to bring their children swim ready, for example, and then they go home in their onesies, as an example. And I think, to be honest, we could cope with that if it means we didn't have to cancel swim lessons and we could keep the pools open. So those are the conversations, the sort of conversations we've been having with Wilmot Dixon, so they understand the parameters that we're working under. There is there will be a comprehensive communications plan around closures. The reason I'm a bit hesitant is because if, in terms of when we will be able to release that, is because if we do end up ordering the bespoke heat pumps, it's likely that the whole programme will end up possibly getting pushed back slightly. Or it will affect elements of it. So, but as soon as we know, we will communicate.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Mansell.
Just one final question from me. If we were to proceed with option 3, just doing Royston, what would be the financial risk the council would be potentially liable to?
So the risk with option 3 is that we have to submit a change control request to Salix to say, will they approve us just doing Royston? We've had the likely grant value calculated, which is in the cabinet papers, but that's based on our original PSDS application. And actually some of the details have changed. You know, for example, installing external insulation rather than internal insulation is one, but it gives you a rough idea of how much grant we might be eligible for. We have raised it with Salix as do you think this could be possible? They're very keen to work with us and make sure that we can try and at least deliver something. So, you know, they are engaged, they're being supportive, and they, from their perspective, actually removing 2 leisure centres is almost an easier change than tinkering with bits of schemes. And, you know, so I would be optimistic that we would be able to get the change request. However, the risk is if they say no, and we've already ordered the air source heat pumps, then that obviously leaves us financially exposed. However, to mitigate that risk, we will get the reason we need to order them if we go for the smaller heat pumps on the 15th of January is because that gives us sufficient lead-in time to, if they're not in stock, that they can order them, get them in stock, and we can vest them prior to the 31st of March. However, we know currently that there are plenty of those units in stock. There's enough units in stock for all 3 leisure centres. So I'm personally hopeful that by the time we get to Cabinet, we would still have plenty in stock just for Royston, in that we could probably delay ordering those heat pumps until we get the go ahead from Salix, because I don't think it would take that long. I mean, so that's where I would come from in terms of trying to minimise that financial risk.
Thank you. Okay. I'll try and widen it out to the rest of the delivery plan report now. Does anyone have any questions on that? Any questions at all? Okay. I will ask one then, just in relation to the corporate risks that are registered. Would it be appropriate, given the announcements around local government reorganisation, for this to be added to the corporate risk register?
Yes, I think it probably would be. I think we'll look at that over the next quarter to the next report. There's also actually work coming out of it as well, so maybe a project as well to be added in there, which we have to decide if it's a corporate project, probably is, given the potential impact and scale of it. So yeah, as part of next views over the next quarter, we'll look at that. And do you have a view on how we might resource that work? To respond to it? Currently, no. There is discussion amongst chief execs and leaders around a working group to look at some options, but no decision yet as to what officer from North Herts would be on that working group, or on the impact more widely around the information might be required, etc. on that. So at the moment, no, not information to comment on that, but I think it's fair to say there will be resource implications, and therefore that further causes issues for our resourcing risk that we've already got on there at a very high level. Okay, thank you. Councillor Allen, do you want to?
Yeah, I'd like to step in here. I will keep you guys updated as soon as we have any further information. At the moment, to be honest with you, there hasn't been anything major coming through. It's all been repeating what has already been said in the white paper and listening to different councils in different areas across the UK complain about it, as opposed to look to move forward from it. There is a group, as Ian was saying, being put together by the districts and boroughs to speak on devolution, because counties' view is somewhat different to all of the districts' view within Hertfordshire. That's not a Labour thing, a Conservative thing, or a Lib Dem thing. That is a districts and county thing. So I will happily answer any questions on that over in Scrutiny if you want me to come in.
Thank you very much. Okay, I don't see any other questions. I did have a few more, but I think in the interest of time, I'm happy to take those by email later. So we'll move to the recommendations, which are that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee comment on the Council Delivery Plan Q2 monitoring report, including the recommendations made to Cabinet, i.e. that Cabinet notes the progress against Council projects as set out in the Council Delivery Plan and approves the changes to the milestones in Appendix A, and that Cabinet notes the performance against the performance indicators and confirms the actions detailed in paragraph 8.4, and 2.2, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee determine any project that they want to receive more detail on as part of the next monitoring report. I'll propose, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Barsworth, thank you. Is there any debate? No debate. Okay, thank you. Well, again, thank you to officers and yourself, Councillor Albert, for this report. Let's take a vote, please, James.
Thank you, Chair. So, yeah, if you can please raise your hand to indicate a vote yes. Thank you, Chair. That is 10 yeses, therefore that is carried unanimously.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on then to item 15, Garden Waste Charge 2025 to 26, with Councillor Amy Allen to present.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. The new subscription year for charging garden waste commences on the 1st of April 2025. Cabinet has been asked to consider an increase in the current annual charge to £55 a year. A 50% concession will still apply to those households in receipt of council tax reduction. Unlike household waste and recycling, there is no legal requirement to collect garden waste, and councils can charge for collections. Not all properties in North Herts require a garden waste collection service, as they either do not have a garden or compost their garden waste. The chargeable service means that only households that choose to use the service will pay. Some choose to have multiple subscriptions. You'll notice that the renewal date for the garden waste subscription service is now in April, not October. This is because in February 2023, the council agreed to a one-off charge of £49 for an 18-month period from October 2023 to March 2025, giving every customer who signed up for said subscription 6 months of the service for free. This was so that the council could bring its subscription renewal period back to when it was intended to start from, which is better aligned to the gardening seasons, which I think makes sense and everyone will probably agree. It also brings it in line with the East Herts Council, with both having a 1st of April subscription renewal date from 2025. For the benefit of everyone on this committee, I think, I should clarify the renewal period only ended up happening in October due to the pause on garden collections due to COVID and the lockdowns in 2020. We're bringing it back to when it should be. Under the new waste and recycling contract, which commences in May 2025, the overall costs to the council for the collection of garden waste will rise, and by around 42%. In 2025, I said that number many times. In 2025, based on current year prices, with a further inflationary increase to be applied in May. So it's going up. Therefore, this is a key consideration when deciding on the appropriate level of charge for 25 to 26. Alongside this, North Herts currently has one of the lowest charges in Hertfordshire, and therefore this context is also to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Are there any questions? Councillor Manser.
Thank you. I know we've obviously got a concession for those of whom are on the council tax discount scheme. Have we looked at potentially offering a concession for those of whom have multiple bins?
I think the reason we went for the concession for the council tax reduction scheme is because it's a per household. It's the garden waste charge is cross per household, so it's not per person. But we haven't looked at it for multiple bins. It's just for that household.
So we're currently proposing to increase it by 42% to £55. I'm conscious of the fact that we've seen an increase before the period of 18 months. Then we obviously saw the 18-month period, and now we're seeing another increase. So is this cost anticipated to increase in line with inflation, or is it going to stay £55? What's the position on that?
I'm not sure that's quite correct, but I'll let
the cost isn't increasing by 42%. It's the cost of the contract costs will increase in terms of collection of garden waste by 42%. In terms of setting a future charge, that is in the remit of Cabinet essentially to set fees and charges. So there is not an agreed approach past 25, 26.
So in budget forecasts, it's forecasted at 55% going forward with no additional increase.
Yes.
Okay.
It's £55, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, that's okay. It's okay. Yeah, it is. It's okay. Councillor Peace.
Yeah, I'll try not to make us too much later. I think everything in this report makes a lot of sense. I represent a rural ward where quite a high percentage of the residents have a garden. The residents in Ickleford are very concerned at the minute that because of the way the bin collections fell over the Christmas period and when the period of cessation of collection of the brown waste was, that we've actually missed 2 collections. And so there's a 6-week period where the brown bin wasn't collected. So we just want to make sure that if we're going to pay an increase, that everybody has a fair service, and that if everybody's going to miss 1 collection, then they miss 1 collection, and we don't have a situation again where our residents have missed 2.
Yeah, you
can. My understanding is that they should only miss 1 collection. So perhaps I could speak to you about that separately. Thank you.
Councillor Albert.
Yeah, I mean, I had precisely the same question raised at the surgery, the council surgery on Saturday, and then raised it with Councillor Allen and with Chloe Hipwood. There is in fact a small error in the communications. So, for example, residents who have their recycling done on a Friday. And they would have had theirs on the Friday before Christmas, and then at that point there would have been, and because the recycling wasn't due to start until the 13th, Monday the 13th. And their next general recycling one would have been the Friday, but was postponed till the Saturday. They would have then missed that 2 collections. But what and I'm hoping that communications has got out on this. What I've had the assurance from Chloe was that actually that garden waste will be collected on Saturday, on this coming Saturday, the 11th of January. including your Christmas trees. And I'm hoping that communication will have gone out from the council just to tell residents. But that is, if we can, you can provide that, Louise, as well, to hopefully residents in where you live as well, in Ickleford, because as I say, there was a mistake in the communications, and there should only be one bin collection missed, garden waste collection missed, and obviously Chloe has assured me that we'll double check that for another year.
Thank you, Councillor Albert. Councillor Winchester.
Thank you. I have no problem at all with this proposal. I was just going to ask a question about the projected 2% drop off in the sign up rate, reducing the additional income to around £150,000. I'm just wondering where that 2% comes from. Is it not possible that if the charges are increased, there's a potential for a larger number of people to drop off, or indeed for private companies to undercut the council service and offer to do it for 40 quid? I mean, do you know of any other commercial services that are thinking about moving into this area? And are you confident with your calculations?
The 2% is an estimate, just to try and reflect their point. There could be a drop off. When we've had previous increases, we're not seeing a drop off over the life of the charging. We've generally seen a sort of very, very, very slow increase in the number of sign-ups, and it hasn't dropped off substantially after each increase. So it might not even be 2%. It could be more. Yeah, there will come a tipping point where maybe it is too much. I don't know. So once come out, I'm not aware of there being any kind of competitors either here or even in any other districts in Hertfordshire or elsewhere, whereby other contracts are coming in. I guess it's the scale of investment for such a service to be too high.
Yeah, Councillor Manser.
Can I just ask, so the cost for the collection of garden waste is going to increase by 42%. Where are we seeing those increases? Because, for example, we're talking about bin hangers. I mean, that's something of which is done generally across the waste service, not just specifically to garden waste. So are we sort of looking at a 42% increase in the entire contract, or are we looking at a 42% increase in the costs of specifically the waste at the garden waste service?
It is specific to the unit rate for garden waste collection. So the contract is made up of scheduled unit rates, and the one for garden waste collection has gone up by that percentage. There are obviously other costs as well that we factor into when looking at the charging for garden waste, including overheads and other myriads of things like stickers and the admin of payments. All those kind of things all factor into it. But that particular element from the contractor has gone up by that percentage compared to the previous contract. But it's fair to say that overall the contract's not going up by 42%, or we'd be in a much worse financial system than we thought we would be. So it's just related to the garden waste collection.
Okay. And in 8.2, it says that other councils are looking at increasing their costs. Is there anything been published about that you can speak to on that?
Not to date. I am aware of other Hertfordshire councils that are intending to put up their garden waste charges this year, including East Herts. However, East Herts, again, haven't published that as yet. We may have that published by the time of Cabinet in terms of what their charge is. I'm aware that others in Hertfordshire are also, but I'm in a position where I can't publicly tell you what those increases are. But I'm going to contact my colleagues in the Heart Waste Partnership to find out what we can tell Cabinet colleagues by the time of the meeting next week.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. So let's move to the recommendations, which are that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee recommends to Cabinet that Cabinet approve the garden waste charge for the period 1st of April 2025 to 31st of March 2026 at £55. I will propose, could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Wright? Yeah. Okay. Is there any debate? Councillor Munster.
Thank you, Chair. Now, members obviously well know that I'm not a fan of this new waste contract, and this isn't the place for me to voice that opposition. But what I will say is, representing a number of rural communities, many households that I canvass, many households that I represent have multiple bins, and they're going to be impacted by this not once but twice. And it's a proposal that's being brought forward by a party who said that they wanted to scrap the brown bin charge, and now we're seeing year-on-year increases. I'm also concerned about the increase that we've seen on rural lanes across North Hertfordshire of garden waste being fly tipped. And of course, there are concerns relating to the residual waste and increases in fly tipping levels
Relevant, Councillor Munster?
I would say
To the
so,
garden waste
because
charging?
if you're making the garden waste service less accessible to everyday people, then it's going to have an impact on fly tipping. Unfortunately, it's going to increase the likelihood. But I've aired my views and I've aired my conversations, and I will vote against this increase.
Thank you, Councillor Munster. Any other contributions to the debate? Councillor Allen?
For airing things. We were elected into administration without any kind of pleasure about garden waste. It was the year before. It wasn't in our manifesto for that year. I just thought I'd drop a few facts there, Ralph. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Allen.
Just a point of clarification. Can Councillor Munster give any proof, actual proof of any garden waste, provable as garden waste, dumped at the side of the road? Because that, to me, sounds dodgy as hell.
May I respond?
You may.
Well, thank you, Councillor Allen. And I know that you're based in Letchworth, but certainly driving around the communities that I represent in the country lanes, certainly in the last few months, we've seen an increase in the amount of fly tipping or from garden waste. I mean, it's visible proof as you drive around.
Okay,
I don't know what more you would want.
Let's move this on. Does anyone else have any contributions to the debate on the garden waste charging? No. Okay, thank you. Right. In that case, we'll move to the vote then.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, we'll go into yeses. Please raise your hand to vote yes for the proposal. That's 8 yeses, Chair. And votes for no. That's 1 vote no. So, Chair, that is carried.
Thank you, James. Okay, and thank you, Councillor Allen, for your contributions there. Move on to item 16, which is the Scrutiny Decisions and Monitoring Tracker. Jeevan Mann to present.
The referrals and recommendations in the decision and monitoring tracker were made to Cabinet by the Chair, Councillor Barnes, on the 19th and 26th of November 2024, following the ONS meeting on 12th of November 2024. Councillor Barnes outlined the main discussion points raised and the reasons for the referrals and recommendations. All items were considered and recommendations noted by Cabinet. These will now be marked as complete. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll just note on this, there is an error in terms of the recommendations that were made to Cabinet, which we want to correct on the museum storage, but still as it was. I think we'll also look to roll this into the work programme in future so that the items are considered together rather than having this as a separate thing. And I guess when we brought this in, I think the intention, or one of my intentions anyway, was to look at this as a tool to see how effective some of the recommendations that we make are and whether those are being adopted. So I think we'll look in some of the briefings that we have to see how we can do that a bit better. Perhaps I'd welcome any feedback on that as well this evening. Does anyone have any questions or comments? No. Okay, cool. Then we'll move to the recommendation that the content of the decisions and monitoring tracker be noted. I'll propose, could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Claydon, thank you. And is there any debate? No, okay. Can we vote then, please, James?
Thank you, Chair. So please raise your hand to vote yes for the motion. Thank you, Chair. That's all 9 members vote yes, so that is unanimously carried.
Thank you. And then we're going to move back to item 13 because we haven't considered that yet as the last item on the agenda, which is the work programme 2024-25, which we moved from earlier in the meeting. Jeevan to present again.
The work programme has been compiled following conversations with the Chair and the Vice Chair and includes the annual reports, items from the full plan and possible items from for scrutiny as in Appendix A. Any suggested topics for the work programme and task and finish groups will be greatly appreciated and can be raised in this meeting or to the Chair, Vice Chair, or by emailing the Scrutiny Officer mailbox, and I will begin to investigate them. With regards to Section 106 Task and Finish Group scoping, it was agreed with Councillor Barnes that the planning team will produce a background paper report regarding development contributions. This, along with the S106 training, which has been scheduled for 13th of January, will provide the relevant background to conduct a focused task and finish group, ensuring time is utilised to address relevant questions. The paper will be made available to councillors at the end of January, and thereafter group leaders will be contacted for membership to task and finish group. LGA peer review. The LGA peer review actions are now included as Appendix C to this report, so that members can review and progress the actions. Actions have been discussed with the Chair and Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Only 2 items remain open on the tracker. That's all from me, Chair.
Thank you, Jeevan. And I would add to that on the Corporate Peer Challenge report, that's now scheduled for February. The report is going to Cabinet next week. The intention is that in February it comes to ONS with a draft action plan attached to it as well that we can then comment on and review. So we'll get a good look at that at the next meeting. We also had a good briefing with the Herts and West Essex ICB on dentistry this afternoon. So they're preparing their presentation on the 11th of March. If there's any topics in particular within that dentistry commissioning remit that you're interested in, any ward issues or anything like that that you want to pick up, or more broader themes, please do let us know and we can feed that into the preparation. It'll be similar in format to the police presentation this evening. Are there any questions? No. Okay. Then we'll move to recommendations that the committee prioritises topics for inclusion in the work programme attached as Appendix A, and where appropriate determines the high-level form and timing of scrutiny input. That the committee, having considered the most recent iteration of the forward plan as attached at Appendix B, suggests a list of items to be considered at its meetings in the coming civic year. And that the Corporate Peer Challenge Action Plan as attached at Appendix C be considered. I'll propose. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Munster, thank you. Is there any debate? Any further comments? No? Okay, well, obviously feel free to make any comments privately too if you would like to. We'll vote on that now, please, James.
Thank you, Chair. So a vote, please raise your hand to vote yes for that motion. Thank you, Chair. That is unanimously carried with 9 yeses.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, everybody, for your contributions this evening. We'll close the meeting now. The next overview and scrutiny meeting is scheduled on Tuesday, the 4th of February, 2025. Thank you.